If you're just joining us, welcome to Humanizing Your Online Course. So this workshop should probably take somewhere around 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to chime in. Comments also are welcome. You can turn on your microphone or the text chat. I think we can begin. So I do have a couple of goals for us today. I want to identify the components of online course humanization. What does that actually mean? What are these pieces? And then I want to explore practical strategies to improve your instructor presence, which is a big part of course humanization. And of course, as always, we want to support your students' overall online course success. So I think some of you already found the text chat, which is wonderful. I thought we could just start with a quick icebreaker. So your name should auto-populate, but if you want to toss in there an emoji to represent your mood, let us know what you teach, and then just your thoughts or impressions. But what gives a strong first impression in an online course? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to type away. And I saw the smiley face. Oh, good. I'm glad. Hopefully, it's a relief that the semester is winding down. Okay, I see all of the responses filtering in. I know I won't get to read all of them, but let's see. We have faculty from SEED. Oh, excellent. Latin American history. More history. Excellent. Graduate courses. Okay. And counseling. Oh, there are so many good answers in here. I hope all of you get a chance to read through some of these. Being responsive makes a good first impression. Engaging visuals. Interesting. The title and the course description. Yes. Being present. Being organized. Being understanding. Yes. Right. There may still be a few responses filtering in, but I think we have a really good start. So I just want to make sure we have enough time to get through the content of the workshop so we can go on ahead and get started. So I do have another question for you. And since you're already in the chat, again, I just kind of wanted to get your perspectives. And this can be very personal to your own courses. But what challenges do you face with humanizing your online course? Oh, I love these answers. Thank you for putting these in here. Um, in experience, I've only taught once and will teach again in the fall. I think there is sometimes this misconception that the teaching practices you use in a face-to-face classroom will translate perfectly in an online environment, and oftentimes they don't. So now you have to kind of rethink about how you want to teach your lesson plan. So I think that's a very honest answer, and it can be really surprising when that happens. I see something about an asynchronous course. Yes, I know a lot of instructors miss that face-to-face interaction. And so asynchronous kind of feels like you're teaching into the abyss. Good intentions can get misinterpreted or lost. Yes. Well, hopefully we're going to have some strategies then that can help with some of these challenges. All right. I see a lot of questions about asynchronous. I didn't specifically address synchronous versus asynchronous because I realized we would probably have both instructors in here, but I do believe that you can adapt these strategies for a variety of modalities. All right. So, as promised, let's just start with the components of humanization. Is my screen still showing? I just got an alert. Okay. Fingers crossed. So, humanization, these are all different components, and you can put them in any order that you want. They really are kind of cyclical. They all pop up over and over again. So there's this idea of empathy, awareness, trust, and presence. I know you're wondering, well, what does that actually mean? Can we have some context? So yes, I agree. We should take a look at what this means specifically as it relates to online courses. So this awareness is learning to ask your students about their unique needs and preferences. That's part of the awareness factor. You don't want to treat your students as a number, and in turn, you don't want students to feel like they're being graded by a computer. You are a person as well, and so you want to have this kind of mutual awareness of each other. Empathy means, have you considered your course through the student lens? Have you tried to imagine your course from the student perspective? Sometimes this means imagining what it's like to be not just a student in your online course, but what it means to be an online student. Maybe they have multiple courses. So, really trying to put yourself in their shoes. Trust, I think we know, is something that's built up over time. But one way that you can really set the foundation for trust is to start displaying a little bit of a vulnerability and sharing some of your kind of like personal history or relevant aspects of your life. So this means that your classroom really is yours. Nobody else has a classroom quite like yours. So we'll look at some ways that you can do this, but maybe you want to share pictures or a little bit of information about yourself. And then there's the idea of presence, demonstrating your own interest and involvement with the course. So again, taking away this idea that this course is automated, that anybody could be grading it, right? You're actively involved with the class. So I took kind of a chronological approach to this. So now we can take a look at all these different steps for humanizing that online space. Somebody had mentioned graphics earlier, so I was really excited that you picked up on this. Online students have actually been known to report that they mix up their online classes. They all look the same, they feel the same, and it can be very startling to hear this because they'll even mix up classes that are in completely different disciplines. So we really want to make sure that we customize these courses. And some of that even begins just with the way we organize a course and the aesthetic appeal. So we have kind of both scenarios here on the screen. So typically I like to start with a welcoming message. That's usually the very first thing that I put in the course. It's right at the top, so everybody sees it as soon as they enter. You got to think about your tone. Can can students hear your voice? Did you do an audio welcome, or is this a text? And do they understand, the joy and happiness that you feel about teaching the course? Is that conveyed? And some of this I realize many of you are already doing, but we also want to think about things like writing out the dates. Now, I can speak from personal experience. I work for NIU. I'm also a student. And if somebody asked me, what week are we in? I probably couldn't tell you. So I think one of the things that we tend to do is we'll start saying, this is our week one module, this is our week two module. But it's actually much more helpful if you put specific dates. When does it open, and when should they have completed the coursework for that week? When you start using modules and folders, you want to kind of create this level of consistency. So students know what to expect each week. Once you have this level of consistency developed, then they're more likely to focus their attention on the content rather than the organization. So for instance, we know that our online students, they have very demanding schedules. I have been in a course with people who were in other time zones. I have been with people who work, different shifts, people who have families. So if you can give them, space in which to complete their coursework, but also having that consistent due date. Maybe things are due by 11:59 p.m. on a Sunday. Uh, this again is going to help students, succeed in your course, and they're also going to feel like you've taken into consideration their unique scheduling needs. I also like to outline the recommended order of steps, and I know this sounds silly, but sometimes students access materials in very different patterns. What I think they're going to click on is not what they click on. So it's helpful to provide instructions and to remind students that this is how you should be accessing the content. Make sure you watch the lecture before you take the quiz. These things are again going to help them feel like, oh, somebody's really interested in what I'm doing. Now, again, the aesthetics, again, I think somebody had mentioned this, so I was really excited to see that in here. Go ahead and make the course your own. Use banners. If you use modules as opposed to folders, you can use images. So I like to use the ones they're called Unsplash, and it gives you a variety of stock photos. But it'll really help students understand when they get into your course, oh yeah, that's this class. I also like to incorporate micro lectures, and I feel like this can be a sensitive topic. Um, Sometimes when we say use micro lectures, I think there's this misconception that sometimes instructors feel like they're being asked to condense their lectures into, 10 or 15 minutes, and that's probably not feasible. But we do know some things about student behaviors is that if you record a very long lecture, they'll likely tune it out or they'll lose focus. So if you put them into micro lectures, they're more likely to stay focused for that 10 or 15 minutes. Maybe then they'll go and do whatever task, was kind of in the back of their mind. And then they'll come back for the second micro lecture. So I know it's such a strange thing, but if you have a 50-minute lecture versus, a couple of 10 to 15-minute lectures, you're likely going to have a better chance of students really tuning in and focusing all their attention on that content if it's broken up into smaller pieces. And I know you're thinking, well, couldn't they just pause it and come back? Yes, they could, but we've learned that students often don't do that. Great, Anne. I'm excited that this worked well for you. Something else that I wanted to point out is to try to use colors that provide sharp contrast. So this is, again, just trying to humanize your course. You may have students who have visual impairments, and if you don't have text that's dark and a lighter background, it can be very difficult for them to actually engage with your course material. So as tempting as it is to highlight everything in yellow, just be aware that this can be problematic for certain students. All right, so I wanted to show you some examples. Yes, this is my sandbox. Um, But as you can see, I have a banner at the top. I have a welcome module with some nice text that welcomes them into the course. And again, I have that little stock image right there with the welcome mat. So right away, you've visually distinguished your course from every other online course, which is really very exciting. Ooh, got a little excited with my mouse there. All right. Some other things that we can do. Next, it's all about introductions. Now, I do have this titled Introduce Yourself, but again, mutual respect, we're going to ask our students to do the same thing. So, one of the things that I've learned is that it's very tempting just to post a photo of yourself, but students really respond to seeing you, hearing your voice. And so I would encourage you, if you've never posted videos, to just experiment with them a little bit. These do not need to be formal. They can be completely unscripted. I remember one instructor did her welcome video while walking her tiny dog. It looked like she was walking a potato, and it was just a beautiful video. I think her students absolutely loved it. And if you record a video, likewise, you could always ask your students to record a video. So things that you can talk about, yes, certainly talk about your academic and professional background, but include a little bit of extra. What are your hobbies? What are your interests? If you do put some photos, not just your professional photo, have a photo with family and friends. This does add, a level of interest to your course. All classroom appropriate, of course. All right. So the other idea that I have here is to start distributing surveys. And I think sometimes it's tempting just to rely on those end of the course evaluations, but that could be a missed opportunity to get some valuable feedback from your students. And so there's some different ways in which you could do this. Now, this particular slide that you're looking at, these are great kind of unit check-ins with your students, right? You can ask them things like in 1 to 2 sentences, summarize what you've learned. Or you could ask them what needs to be clarified, what questions do you still have? And the third one, I know it can make you feel a little vulnerable, but you can ask them, how could this lesson be improved? You might be surprised what kinds of feedback you get. I remember one instructor said, I couldn't believe it. My students said that they absolutely loved this, silly activity that I did for 10 or 15 minutes. And they all requested to do more of it. And so she incorporated that activity into the next unit of the course. And lo and behold, all the students' engagement really improved. So if you're open to this, this could be a great way for you to kind of make some of those adjustments in your course on the fly. There are other surveys, though, that we can distribute as well. So now this is actually a survey that my director produced, and he shared it with me. And so I will send this to you in a follow-up email. It's actually using, I think, Microsoft, or I'm sorry, Google Forms, but anybody can make a copy of it. And so this is just a survey that he would hand out at the beginning of class, and he asked students to tell some things about themselves. What are your expectations? What are characteristics of your favorite professor? How did they help you grow? What characteristics did your least favorite professor, exhibit? That kind of a thing. What is your main motivation to succeed academically and socially? This can reveal a lot about our online students. And I think there are different opinions about online teaching. It can initially feel cold, maybe overwhelming. Sometimes there's this feeling of being disconnected from your students. But sometimes surveys can really help us connect with our students because a lot of students, might be more introverted and they would feel more comfortable answering these types of questions in a survey as opposed to, verbally kind of speaking their mind. So I do think there's an opportunity to really get to know your online students. So I will be happy to share the rest of this survey with you. You could use it or modify it, but it again might give you some ideas on how to get to know your students right away. I would encourage you to deploy it early on in your course so that you know more about each of your students. Okay, so our next one that we have here is how to establish an instructor presence. We do have another workshop that is specifically devoted to this topic. So I just wanted to give you some of the highlights, and I'm happy to share those other resources with you as well. So I think I mentioned before this idea about multimedia and videos. We know that students really respond to this. So there are some different options here. You can record video announcements, which is actually in the announcement tool, or you can post introductions to each of your weekly or unit modules. And the advantage to doing this is that it actually sets the tone for the week. You know, this is what we're going to be doing. These are the goals. This is our agenda. So this can really help students feel connected with your particular course. I have some suggestions here as well in a couple more slides here about providing meaningful feedback. But I would encourage you to think about what did the student do well, making sure that they know, these are things that I would like to see you continue to do in future assignments. And then I would also encourage you to focus your feedback just on elements that students can revise. Or if your course is scaffolded and you know they're learning a skill that is going to be applied to the next unit or to the next module, you can actually point that out to students and you can say, okay, next time I want you to focus on this. And you'll have an opportunity to do this in, module 8. I think sometimes it's discouraging as a student to get feedback that, maybe you didn't do something well or something was incorrect, but there's no opportunity to practice or revise. So if you can focus your attention there, I think students will be really receptive to your feedback. And then we have this idea of discussion boards. So do any of you currently use discussion boards in your class? Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yeses. I thought this was a popular tool. They work well for synchronous and asynchronous courses. So the idea here with discussion boards, and we get a lot of questions about this, is that you want to have this tangible presence in the discussion board, but you also don't want to dominate the discussion. And so I know some instructors feel that they have to respond to every single student post, and that's really probably not the case. So, all right. So these are just some of the examples. This should probably look familiar to those of you who use announcements currently in Blackboard. I don't know if you've ever noticed this tool or not, but there's actually a little camera right there in the announcement tool. So it's optional if you want to have your video on. Maybe you just want to do an audio recording, but instead of just doing a text-based, announcement, you can actually do video and audio messages for your students. So same thing goes for feedback. And so this particularly pertains to the grade book. So in the grade book, you have that similar tool. My arrow moved on the first one, but yes, you can see my feedback here for Winston Churchill. Instead of maybe having to write out all of my comments for Winston's essay, I could just post a video. And the video is really, it's kind of like a selfie. It's just you and your web camera. Now, I know some of you would prefer to actually have the camera turned on the student, submission or their document that they turned in which case, then I would encourage you to check out NIU's video platform, Kaltura. And so this is an opportunity, say if students turned in a paper, you could, scroll through the pages and point to different things. You could say this passage was really impressive. I just wanted to talk about it. And so then the visual focus is on the student submission rather than a webcam turned on you. So two different options, but you can attach your feedback to your students' work using some of these other options. I sometimes feel constrained, like I can only just type feedback. And, this can be really a great way to get through grading quickly too. So there's advantages for you as well. And yes, students can replay, your feedback over and over as many times as they need. Okay. So I wanted to talk about those discussion boards a little bit. Now, this just goes beyond, asking students to talk about a concept. So these are some of the different things we can ask them to do. We can ask them to analyze things, synthesize a concept, evaluate it, or apply it. So I feel like sometimes, maybe students just get bored with discussion boards. We have to think about them a little bit differently. I'll give you some suggestions here. And these also come down to your roles within the discussion board. So you can act as somebody who's clarifying things. Maybe students have questions, you can respond to them, or you might just notice that your students are kind of going down the wrong path and you can help kind of rein them back in and come back to the main topic. You can prompt them for more. That was a good response, but we need a little bit more information. You can elaborate. You can certainly ask your learners to identify their own beliefs and assumptions as well as those of experts in the field. So this maybe will help you think a little bit differently about discussion boards. I think these can get overwhelming very quickly for instructors, particularly if you have a large roster of students. So again, I would encourage you to think about, how often do you respond and what is manageable and feasible to demonstrate your instructor presence. Something else you can do is you can divide your students into groups within the discussion board, and then maybe you only have one comment per group. So that's also another way just to feel like students are getting that individual attention while still maintaining your own work balance. All right, I feel like we're doing pretty good on time. Do we have any questions yet? Comments?
Hi, Megan.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hello.
hi. I was late a little bit. Sorry about that. So,
No.
yeah, can you explain that Cultura capture thing a little bit more? I'm wondering because I've been, making my videos and then upload it to Cultura, right, the space,
Mhm.
and insert that into my courses. But Cultura capture sounds like I don't need to make that individual file and like, upload to somewhere, just record something on the fly and Blackboard automatically inserts into somewhere, or is it
When
just another version of making videos using the Kaltura space?
I like Kaltura because it does not count against your course storage. So that is an excellent question. But I will be honest, it is not integrated directly into the
Oh,
grade book. So there
okay.
are a few more steps that we have to take. So if you record something in Kaltura, and you want to, like if you gave feedback to your student in Kaltura and you wanted them to access the feedback, there's still a couple more steps on how they can click the link to see your video,
And is it going
which
to be intuitive to students to watch the video or
I think so. I
okay.
oftentimes I'll just tell them, please click this link to see my feedback.
Mm, I
Or I
see.
might do an announcement. Like once I have everybody's links created, then I'll say, hey, I've finished grading your essays or your final projects. Please make sure that you view the link in the grade book for my video feedback.
Okay. Thank you. I'll try.
Yes,
Thank you.
and I'm happy to show you and demonstrate how to do it step by step too.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, great question. All right, so I wanted to give us some contextual examples here. So I have a couple of these coming up, but oftentimes when we're in an online space, we talk about that flipped classroom environment, and it's really trying to put ownership on the students that this is your education, and it should mean something to you personally. And we really want to get away from, I think, most of the my colleagues in my department call it passenger syndrome, and it's where students can sit through an online course and they really don't say too much, and they might in turn feel like they're supposed to be a sponge just absorbing knowledge. But we know that, regardless of modality, whether it's, online, face to face, or a combination of the two, people learn best through the act of doing, and so that's where we want to really utilize this idea of problem-based learning. So, up at the top here, we have what we call traditional learning. And this really stemmed from lecture-based classrooms, the very early forms of classrooms. So, this is when students are told what they need to know, then they're going to memorize it, and then they're going to have a problem assigned to illustrate how to use that particular knowledge. It's not a terrible way to help learners accrue new knowledge, but it might not be the most effective, particularly online. So rather than telling them what they need to know, you kind of mix up the order. And so you start with a problem, and then they have to identify what they need to know. And then they're going to learn and apply it to solve the problem. So I thought maybe we should look at a couple of examples. Now, I just picked some different disciplines, so maybe these will appeal to you, maybe they will not. But the first one is for this British literature course. Now, you can still do groups, synchronous or asynchronous, and you're going to ask students to close read an anonymous passage. So this could be, like a long lost poem or something. And they're going to be looking at things like diction, imagery, form, tone, etc., all the different components of literature. And they have to make a claim as to who authored the passage and provide supporting evidence. Now, this could be a great discussion board activity. So after they've come up with their claim and their supporting evidence, now they're going to look at other groups and they're going to provide constructive feedback for the other groups. And the final part to this project is now as individuals, students are going to reflect, kind of what did they learn, what did they reconsider based on feedback provided by their peers. Um, did their opinion change or did it remain the same? And then just to reflect and provide rationale for how they arrived at their answer. So that's one idea. Here's a different one. This is a cybersecurity course. Right? You couldn't get two more different courses if you tried. So here's the scenario that you give your students. You're going to say that you have been hired as cybersecurity consultants for a small business, and you need to identify at least 3 of the vulnerabilities or poor practices that this company is using, and as well as explain those inherent risks, what could happen based on those poor practices. Students must propose practical solutions for each of their identified security risks. And then the final step is that students will create an infographic that outlines their findings and recommendations. Now, I do think that these are both kind of examples of what you could do in a class. I think it could work for synchronous. I think it can also work for asynchronous. Um, but it is, again, asking students to think critically, to solve a problem. And again, I think it's going to humanize the course because no two people think the same. So they might come up with different solutions. Okay. So on to more examples. Now, I know particularly with asynchronous courses, you may feel like, oh, I never get to meet my students. Well, you can still require them to come meet with you. So this could be requiring them to pop in and meet with you during virtual office hours, kind of a thing. I particularly like to use Microsoft Bookings for this because I can offer, a wide range of times that students can sign up to meet with me, and then it'll block off my calendar accordingly. But there are other options. And you can use Collaborate, you can use Zoom, you can use Teams. So we have a lot of options. But it's really a great idea to ask your students to meet with you early on in the course. We've learned with students if they feel disconnected, if they feel like they don't know you yet, even if they have a question, they're less likely to come to you. So just initiating this kind of icebreaker activity where they meet with you just for a couple of minutes to, tell you about their academic goals. Why did they pick this course? Things like that. Ooh, Michelle, I also believe this is critical. I do host 10-minute required meetings with each student. Yes, I really think this is, it does require a little bit of planning on your part. You have to have a little bit of flexibility with your schedule because we know that our students have crazy, you know, schedules and just a lot going on in their lives. But it can really change the dynamics of your course. I also like it. Not just early on in the course, but maybe later on as well. Maybe as students are gearing up towards a large project, you can have them meet with you to discuss their first draft. Or after they've received your feedback, they should come to meet with you before they start on revisions. So there's a lot of opportunities there where students can get to know you. It doesn't require you to be on campus, but yes, it does require them, just to have a little bit more interaction with you. All right. Oh, I think we're going to make it in 45 minutes as I thought. And of course, we want to support our students' learning. And so I know I've got this little blurb in the bottom corner here, remember, and I use support units and refer your students to them. Sometimes we don't always know what those units even are. So it's a great thing just to check in. So I don't know if any of you have explored this or not explored this. Um, I think oftentimes we put in our syllabus, things like the DRC and tutoring or maybe the writing center. But there are other resources for students that we can refer them to. So the next time you're in Blackboard on the left side of your screen, just look for that little rocket ship. Actually, it kind of looks like a pencil, but look for Blackboard Assist. And this has the most up-to-date list of resources for your students. Things that I didn't even know about. And so this is a great place to direct your students. And you can also humanize your course by incorporating some resources maybe that are not on this list. I saw a lot of instructors rally during the pandemic, and I saw instructors pointing students to things like food pantries or known Wi-Fi open hotspots so that they could, access the internet for free so they could do their coursework online. So these are all great things that you can include in your course. I think it'll really make a world of difference to your students. All right, so these are some references, and as promised, I will send you a follow-up email as well with some resources. Is there maybe anything that I can answer for you or demonstrate?
Megan, would you be willing to send those slides?
Sure.
That
Yes.
would be great. They were very helpful. I think this is probably the one of the best presentations I've seen, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was just the most wonderful compliment. I appreciate that.
Hi,
I am
Megan.
very
This
happy to
is
send that.
Ann. And I agree. This was so helpful. And I feel much better prepared, I guess. The thing that I would really, really like to see, like I love all the slides, but I especially struggle with the Blackboard prompts, the discussion prompts. And I thought the way you broke that down was so helpful. I would love to see that.
Excellent. Well, I have one last resource for you. I know I've got the slide up here that says connect with us. So one of the best ways that we can help you is if you just want one-on-one personal support, let us know. You can either email me directly or there's this one-on-one consultation. So we do 1 hour virtual consultations with you on any topic that's of interest. So it could be me, it could be one of my fellow instructional designers, but just look for the online teaching option. Or you can email me. So lots of ways to get a hold of me. But I know sometimes you want that personalized support. What do I click on? How do I set something up? So just let us know. We're happy to spend time with you. Well, thank you so much for coming. I was so excited. I thought maybe everyone was going to be burnt out by the end of the semester. So this was an unexpected surprise.
Aurora wrote a question that I'd also like to know the answer to. How many one-on-one meetings with students should we schedule throughout the course?
That's a really good question. I guess we were looking for kind of a rule of thumb on this. I do think it depends also on how many students are enrolled in your course. If somebody had 80 students in a course versus, I taught English, so we usually capped out at, 25. I think we had some different answers for that. I would say at least try to do two, right? One early on so that students are prompted kind of to come meet with you. It really breaks that barrier early on. And then there's some sort of follow-up activity. So I would say at least two. But it's up to you. If students signed up for an asynchronous course, I might say, you don't need to go wild with these meetings because they likely chose an asynchronous course because it complemented their busy lifestyle. Versus if you had a synchronous course, another option is sometimes you could cancel traditional class and that class period, you could break it up into 15-minute installments where students come to meet with you. So that's another way to approach it. Is that at all helpful?
Megan, if time allows, can you show us how that Cultura capture works on Blackboard, or you can just open um, your Blackboard
Yeah,
course and show us some example?
yes. So Kaltura
Thank
has
you.
a lot of features. I kind of think of it like the artichoke, like the more you play with it, the more things you realize you can do with it. But I think we could do just, kind of a general demonstration. If any of you need to leave, by all means, please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stop the recording.